and welcome to Wednesday's Maths. So yesterday we started looking at decimal place value. We did a little bit on rounding. Today we're going to use that place value knowledge to start comparing decimals, and then we're going to try and convert decimals into fractions and vice versa. Okay, my first challenge for today is this. Which number is larger, 3.61 or 3.7? Pause your video and have a go at working this out. So, hopefully, because I can't see you, hopefully you are trying to tell me that 3.7 is bigger. Now, why might some people think it's 3.61 then? Well, some people would look at these numbers and would think 3.61 has got more digits, therefore it must be larger, just like 113 is bigger than 3 because it's got more digits. However, just because a number's got more decimal place value digits, it doesn't mean that that number is bigger. Remember, a decimal is part of a whole. So just because there's more decimal numbers, it doesn't mean that number is any bigger. 3.61 has got 3 wholes. 3.7 has also got 3 wholes. So at the minute, we can't tell a difference. So then we look at the tenths column. 3.61 has got 6 tenths. 3.7 has got 7 tenths. That then tells me that 3.7 must be bigger. It doesn't matter that 3.61 has got 100th and 3.7 hasn't got any, because it's the biggest place value that you need to look at first. So you look at the ones, then look at the tenths. Right, now have a look at these numbers, 11.4, 11.04 and 4.11. Can you put them into descending order? So something is descending, means you go from biggest to smallest because you're descending, you're going down. Pause the video and have a go. For this one, I need to look at the whole numbers first. Here, I've got 11 wholes. This one's got 11 wholes and this one's only got 4 wholes. So that tells me what one of these two are going to be the biggest number because they've got more wholes. 11.4, this one has got 4 in the tenths column. This number has got 0 in the tenths column. So which number is bigger? This one. So 11.4 is the biggest number. I then know that this one's going to be the second biggest because it's got more wholes than this one. So then it would be 11.04 and then 4.11. It doesn't matter that this one here has got more decimal digits than this one. It doesn't matter that this one's got a tenth and a hundredth because you always look at the biggest place value first. So look at your tens, then your ones, then you look at the decimal. Okay, for this one, we've got 4 numbers. So again, I want you to tell me which one's the biggest. I want to go and descend in order down to the smallest. So to look at these ones, again, you start at the biggest place value. So we're looking in the ones column. This number's got 1, 1. This number has got 1, 1. This has got 3 ones and this has got 3 ones. So I know that one of these two is going to be the biggest. I've looked at the ones column, the wholes, and they're exactly the same. So now I'm going to look at the tenths. This one's got 1 tenth, this one's got 3 tenths, so this number is the biggest. Followed by 3.11 because that's still got 3 wholes, and I'm going to cross them off so I don't get confused. Now I need to compare 1.31 and 1.11. Well, as you can see, they've both got the same number as wholes, so I look in the next column, which is the tenths column. This one's got 3 tenths, this one's got 1 tenth, so this number is then the next biggest, and 1.11 is the smallest. Well done if you got that right. And now I'll show you why. So here in this tenths column, we have got 1 tenth. Here we have got 3 hundredths. And here we've got 2, forgot my 0, I do apologise. And here we've got 2 thousandths. Now, if I was going to add these together, this 1 tenth, this 3 hundredths and this 2 thousandths, I can't add these together thinking about my fraction knowledge because the denominators are different. So I need to make the denominators the same. By doing this, I look at my denominators. I need a common denominator. So my common denominator is going to be 1,000. This one is already in thousands, so I don't need to do anything. To get from hundredths 100 to 1,000, I times by 10. So I times my denominator by 10, times my numerator by 10. Because this here, this 3 hundredths is the same as 30 thousandths. because 10 hundredths, no, wrong way around, sorry, 10 thousandths make 100th. If you times this by 10, you go into this column here. So 30 thousandths is the same as 3 hundredths. These are equivalent fractions. Here, if I want to turn tenths into thousandths, I need to times it by 100, which means I need to times my numerator by 100. So 100 thousandth is the same as 1/10. Okay, 100 thousandths is the same as 1/10, because if you times this column by 100, you would get to the tenths column. Now I can add all of these together because they are all in thousands. So 100 thousandths add 30 thousandths add 2 thousandths would be 132 thousandths. And you can see this here when you look at that decimal number. If you read this number, you've got 132. The column it ends in is the thousandths column. So you've got 132 thousandths. Second question on converting between fractions and decimals. This time you have got 1.17. Is that the same as 1 whole and 17 tenths? Is that the same as 1 whole and 17 thousandths? Or is that the same as 117 hundredths? So this 1 whole here I can write as 1 whole like this. I'm going to change into green pen so you can see my working out. I've got 10, no I haven't, I've got 1/10, so I could write it like this. And I've got 7 hundredths, so I could write it like this. So I can't add these straight away because the denominator is different. I'm going to turn it into hundredths by times in by 10, times in by 10. So it would be 1 whole and 17 hundredths. And if I look at this, that's because I've got 17 and I end in the hundredths column. 17 hundredths, 17 hundredths. I've only got this 1 whole because there was 1 whole at the start. Right, so my answer I'm looking for is 1 whole and 17 hundredths. So 1 whole and 17 tenths. No, that's not right, because 10 tenths, if that was a 0, 10 tenths would be a whole, so then it would be 2 wholes. So that one's not right. I'm looking for 1 whole and 17 hundredths. Here I've got 1 whole and 17 thousandths. Well, that's not right then, because for this to be right, the 7 would need to be in the thousandths column. So I read my number as 17 thousandths. So that one's not right. Right, well, this one here says 117 hundredths. Are these two things equivalent? Hopefully you've worked out here, I've tried to trick you. Yes, these are equivalent because 100 hundredths would be 1 whole. So this would be the same as 1 whole and 17 hundredths. Here is our third question. So, is 0.18 the same as 18 thousandths, 18 tenths, or 18 hundredths? Have a go. So this has got no ones, so I don't need to worry about having a 1 whole this time. So we've got 1/10 and we've got 8 hundredths. So I can write this as 1/10, add 8 hundredths, make my denominators into hundredths, so times it, which would be 18 hundredths. The quick way of doing this though, and this is the method I want you to start trying to have a look at, is looking at your number. Right, I've got 18 and I'm stopping in the hundredths column. I've got 18 hundredths because you know that 10 hundredths mean it has to go into this tenths column. So you've got 18 hundredths. Right, I'm going to do some quick fire ones now. Let's see how quickly you can convert these. Question number 1. Can you convert 2.132? Go. So for this one, you should have had 2 wholes and 132 thousandths. So this should have looked like 2 wholes, 132 thousandths. I also would give you the mark if you'd written that 2 wholes as 2,132 thousandths. Right, next one, as quick as you can. 0.77 as a fraction. Go. Hopefully for this one, you can see it would be 77 hundredths. So you'd write it as 77 hundredths because this 7 tenths here is the same as 70 hundredths. Right, last one. Have a go. 0.503. Hopefully you can see that this one is 503 thousandths. So I'd write this as 503 over 1,000. Well done. Now we're going to have a go at converting from fractions to decimals. So this is just doing it the opposite way round. Little hint for you, it might be helpful for you to start off writing your place value at the top, because that might help you. So I want you to turn 5/10 into a decimal. Go. So this one is nice and easy. If you've got 5/10, you've got a 5 in the tenths column. Nothing in the hundredths, nothing in the thousands, nothing in the ones. So 5/10 is the same as 0.5. Ooh, 0.5. I feel like I know something else about 0.5. What else is equivalent to 0.5? Hopefully you can remember that 0.5 is the same as a half. And that's because 5/10 is equivalent to a half. If you divide both of these by 5, you would get 1, 2. You would get a half. So 5/10 is the same as 1/2, and 1/2 as a fraction, as a fractions here, and as a decimal is 0.5. These are some decimal fraction equivalences that we need to know. Okay, so 1/2 is the same as 0.5. I will be quizzing you on these in a moment. Next one, 25 hundredths. Have a go at writing this as a decimal. So there's 25 hundredths. So there's nothing in the ones column. There's 25 hundredths. So there's a 5 in my hundredths column, and there's 25. So if there's 20 hundredths, that must be 2/10, and there's nothing in my thousandths column. So I can put a 0, or I can just leave it because that 0 does not change my number. So 25 hundredths is the same as 0.25. What else can you remember about 0.25? What else is 0.25 equivalent to? Let's have a look. Let's simplify this fraction. So if I divide both of these by 5, 100, tell you what, let's go even bigger than that. Let's divide them both by 25. So 25 divided by 5 would be 1. 100 divided by 25 would be 4, because it's 25, 50, 75, 100. So 25 hundredths is equivalent to 1/4. So 1/4 is equivalent to 0.25. What do we do, however, when the denominator is not already in tenths, hundredths and thousandths? Because if it's in tenths, hundredths and thousandths, we can turn that into a decimal really easily because of decimal place value. But for this question, this fraction is in fifths. Hopefully you can remember that I might need to turn this into tenths, hundredths or thousandths, because that's the decimal place value. Now, the easiest thing to turn fifths into is tenths. We times it by 2. So we times the denominator by 2. 1 times 2 is 2. So 2/10, if I have my place value at the top, would be 0.2. So 1/5 is equivalent to 0.2. That's another equivalent fraction to decimal conversion that we need to know. So 1/5 is the same as 2/10, which is the same as 0.2. Next one, 1/8. So to turn this into a decimal, I need to find it into tenths, hundredths or thousandths. Can I times 8 by anything to get to 10? No. Can I times 8 by something to get to 100? No, not a whole number anyway. What can I times 8 by to get to 1,000? Well, you can times it by 125. So 8 times 125 is going to give us 1,000. 1 times 125 is, of course, 125. Can we now write that as a decimal? Yes, we can. It would be 0.125 because it's 125 in the thousandths column, and we've learnt this at school, okay? Because 1/8 is the same as 0.125. Okay, that's how we remembered it at school, wasn't it? We did 1/8 is the same as 0.125, and that is why. Okay, last little bit before Hegarty. Have a go as quickly as you can at these decimal to fraction or fraction to decimal conversions. So 1/4 would be the same as 25 hundredths, which would, because you would turn this into tenths, hundredths or thousands. You can't turn it into tenths, but you can turn it into hundredths. 4 times 25 is 100, so we times the numerator by 25, which would be 25. 25 hundredths you would write as 0.25 because it's 25 in the hundredths column. Next one, 0.5. This 5 is in what column? It's in the tenths column, so it would be 5 tenths. And if we simplify this, we would simplify it to a half. 0.125, so it's 125, what column? The thousandths column, so it's 125 thousandths. We can simplify this, we can divide this by 125, which would leave us with 1/8. And the last one, 0.2. So this is in the tenths column, so this is the same as 2 tenths, and if we simplified this, it would be 1/5. Well done for today. I know that was a bit of a whistle-stop tour through everything, but hopefully you followed it all. So we're now going to have a go at Hegarty Maths 53. If you need any help or you've got any questions, just let me know. See you tomorrow.